In Europe's travel world, it's not the best of times, but it's also not the worst. Total travel bookings grew just 2% in 2018. And when we look at consumer trends, some of that softness is reflected, but we also see signs of sustained passion for travel, significant shifts in shopping behavior, and opportunities for growth. So even in a tepid economy, the European traveler is resilient. Last year, about 3 in 5 adults in France, Germany, and the UK traveled for leisure. And although we tend to think of Europe as a well-established and mature travel market and a place where travel is ingrained as a part of the way of life, we have seen significant growth in travel over the past several years. In France and Germany, the percentage of the adult population who traveled for leisure went up by more than 10 percentage points from 2012 through 2018, and that's been fairly steady across those years. However, last year, European travelers spent less. A little bit of an uptick in spend from France, but declines in both Germany and the UK. At the same time, trip frequency went up by 4% in France and the UK. So how is that possible? Spend's down, trip frequency is up. Well, we saw a dip in high-spend travelers and an increase in budget and mid-range spenders. So travelers are holding on to the travel, but they are watching their wallets and spending a little bit less. Despite shorter trips and lower spend, we did see an increase in visits to destinations outside of Europe. So from 2016 through 2018, slight increases, and you're looking at about a third of travelers from France and the UK left the region in 2018. Diving in real quickly to some country-level patterns here, French travelers took fewer trips, but were the strongest in terms of holding on to their longer trips of 1 week or more. German travelers were the most consistent with trip length and frequency, but their trips did trend slightly shorter. And UK travelers were the most likely to take a larger number of short trips. Now, this is a space, private accommodations, hot in our industry, hot in the media. It's not exactly on a tear in Europe at the moment, in terms of adoption at least. So in the middle there, we have the percentage of travelers who stayed in a rental in the last 12 months. And it's third after, well, it's right up there with mid-scale hotels and upscale hotels. But if you remember that if you take into account that the 4 other categories in this top 5 are all actually subsegments of the broader traditional lodging category, that share of private accommodation stayers looks a lot smaller. And in fact, in France and Germany, where private accommodations are better established, what we saw in 2018 was a slight increase, tiny increase in hotel stayers, and also very small decrease in private accommodation stayers. I think what you're looking at here is a pretty established habit that now is going to fluctuate year on year for various reasons, and it's hard to get up to and past that 50% mark. In the UK, it was the opposite. So private accommodations are less established there, and so in 2018, we see the growth pattern for private accommodations and an attendant decline in the percentage of travelers who stayed in hotels. So UK, as far as private accommodations are concerned, is in more of a growth mode for adoption. What has gone up significantly is booking of private accommodations through dedicated sites that are specifically selling private accommodations, particularly in Germany and France from 2014 through 2018, that essentially doubled the share of travelers who book their private accommodations through a dedicated site. Tours and activities. More than 90% of European travelers participated in some sort of travel activity on their last trip. And when we look at what they did, we don't tend to see huge variations country by country, but there are a few interesting patterns. So the German travelers are significantly more likely to take day trips and excursions or participate in sightseeing tours, also much more likely to participate in outdoor activities. And the UK travelers, interestingly, trail in every single category except for hitting the bar or the club. Always fun when some of those little things pop up. So when we try to map, look at what travelers are doing in destination and see if it lines it up at all with what they look for in a destination, there's some pretty good consistency here. So the sightseeing tours, one of the top things to do when traveling. Outdoor activities, also really high up there. And across all three markets, natural features and landmarks and sightseeing both fall into the top three criteria that they are looking for in a destination. And then for German and UK travelers, measures of convenience were really important. So shopping behavior. Europe is a pretty mature online market, but there still are really interesting changes going on here. We are seeing OTAs surging. We're seeing mobile catching on a little more slowly. So OTAs here have done a huge job of bringing all of this fragmented content, fragmented independent hotel content online, and that has led to an attendant change in consumer behavior. So especially if you look at the French market there, the percentage of French travelers who say they typically book on an OTA, this is for hotel in particular, who typically book on an OTA, that nearly doubled from 2014 through 2018. So lots of change has still been happening here. What's down is every single offline channel. It's gone from kind of that 10% range, some high single digits, down to mid-single to low single digits. And this is for calling travel providers or booking through a traditional travel agent. Once we get down into that area of the 5% and below, you're getting pretty close to a bottoming out, and that last bit is likely to hang on and to continue to bring their business to those offline channels. Also down, supplier sites and apps in the hotel space. So this follows as the OTAs have done such a great job of bringing content online, and consumers are learning that that's the place to shop. Hotel sites and apps are losing some of that booking habit. One of the reasons, or one of the things one of the levers that has proven effective elsewhere in terms of moving hotel bookings to the suppliers, it's less of a factor in Europe, and that's loyalty. And these numbers are really striking from an American perspective. 2/3 of French travelers belong to no travel loyalty programs. 3/4 of German travelers and more than half of UK travelers don't belong to a program to begin with. So as European travelers continue to shift online, they're still not gravitating towards mobile in huge numbers, particularly for bookings. So in 2018, more than 1/4 of European hotel stayers booked on their smartphones sometime that year. And slightly fewer flyers, 25%, said they booked on smartphones at some point in that year. But when we look at the last trip, this is where you're going to see, is it a habit? Is it really their preferred method or typical behavior? There were at lower than 10% who booked hotel or flights on their last trip via mobile. And for private accommodations and car, it's slightly higher, but it's still below 15%. You've got a combination there of younger travelers in private accommodations, business travelers booking car rentals. Both of those have higher adoption in mobile. So in Europe, travelers continue to make exploring the world a priority, even if that means spending a little less. And OTAs are attracting a bigger and bigger share of bookings. Private accommodation adoption has plateaued in Germany and France. It's still growing in the UK. And finally, mobile is an established shopping channel, but smartphone booking is not a matter of habit yet. Still plenty of room for growth and disruption. Thanks.